Well, strap on your happy thoughts and hold on to your marbles. This is Film Shake, and we're here to talk about 1991's Hook. I'm Jordan.
This is Nick.
And welcome. Thank you guys for tuning in once more. Or if you're new to the show, hey, we're a 90s movie podcast. We talk about everything from the terrible to the awesome. Yes, we'll have a trivia battle at the end of the show to decide who gets punished with another terrible movie. Spoiler alert, it'll probably be me because I always lose. But either way, Nick, you actually faked a loss last time. You insulted me by giving me such ridiculously easy questions that I had to win. And you were punished with a movie. Or can we call it a movie? What do you have to say about this?
Yes, 1941. I'd never seen it. Like most people born in the late 70s and early 80s. And before that and beyond that, I'm a huge fan of Spielberg. His movies, in many ways, are my cinematic childhood. I always heard about this movie, 1941, and that it was terrible. That was the reputation that it had when I was a kid, was this is an awful movie. And as I got older, I didn't really see it improve much, and I never really felt the need to watch it. And that continued on until last week, whenever I just felt so bad for you, like I always do with trivia, because I just beat you senseless all the time. So I made up those ridiculous questions with the sole purpose of making an excuse for myself to watch 1941, which is the movie that Steven Spielberg made after Jaws, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and then right before Raiders of the Lost Ark and E.T. the Extraterrestrial. So you have 5 movies there. 4 of those are 4 of the greatest movies made in the last 25 years of the 20th century. And one of them is 1941, because this movie's not good. Finally, I think in the last few years, really with just Twitter, where like having like a contrary opinion will, get you more views and more activity and more clicks. People are trying to maybe say now, oh, this movie's misunderstood and this movie might actually be a masterpiece. But it's not. This movie's terrible.
Fill us in, though. What is this movie about?
So here's what this movie's about. This movie is supposed to be some type of spoof or commentary on Americans freaking out after Pearl Harbor in December of 1941. So Pearl Harbor has happened. And in real life, after Pearl Harbor happened, there was a Japanese submarine attack on an oil refinery off the California coast. And after that, people were very paranoid about Japanese attacks. And there was something called the Battle of Los Angeles, where Los Angeles actually was not under attack. People went nuts thinking that they were being attacked, and people were firing into the sky, and the military was firing shells into the sky, and there was nothing there. Nothing actually happened. So this movie is a spoof on that, except there actually are Japanese people right off the coast in the submarine. But here's what happens. I'm sorry I'm so scattered. This movie has no through line, Jordan. It's just total chaos. It starts off like Jaws. And when I say it starts off like Jaws, the actress that gets eaten at the beginning of Jaws strips naked on a beach and runs into the ocean to kick this movie off. Exactly like
Wow.
Jaws. So immediately you're thinking, oh, Amazon must have screwed up with the prints here. They're accidentally showing me Jaws. But then, instead of her getting eaten by a shark, a Japanese submarine surfaces. Granted, she's like 30 feet off the beach and the water should be about 8 feet deep. But somehow a Japanese submarine gets underneath her and lifts her naked form up into the sky while she's clutching at the periscope. And guess who's on this submarine, Jordan? It's Toshiro Mifune and Christopher Lee.
What?
Yes, Toshiro Mifune. We talked about him way back when we were in a 90s show. One of the greatest actors of all time. One of the greatest Japanese actors. He's in this movie, Jordan, as a Japanese submarine captain. And Christopher Lee, really underrated as an actor, but probably not underrated as an icon, because he is an icon. I mean, he's Dracula, he's Saruman, he's amazing. He's in this. He plays a Nazi who's just chilling with the Japanese on the submarine. So they're there. People are gawking at the naked woman on the top of the submarine. You're wondering, like, is this supposed to be funny? This feels kind of weird. And then the Japanese officer is really serious, and this Nazi is serious, and there's a Nazi in this movie. And I don't even know, like, I know I'm everywhere. I'm sorry. I tried to take notes for this movie, and I just totally gave up. but it's just like a really weirdly horny movie where the Battle of Los Angeles is repeated in this, except the reason that there's a battle is because there's this guy that really wants to have sex with this woman. It's the general secretary, but she'll only have sex on a plane. She can only have sex on a military plane. That's the only way that she can get there. So he's trying to get her on a plane so he can have sex with her. And the thing is, he doesn't even really know how to fly a plane. He's lied to her throughout the movie, trying to make her think he's like this military pilot, and he's not. But he finally is able to sequester a plane and get it into the sky, and they fly over Los Angeles. And then John Belushi, who is just flying a warplane around the West Coast looking for Japanese to shoot at for some reason, he sees them flying over LA, which they're doing accidentally because they're having sex on the plane, and then he shoots them down, and then everyone in LA thinks that they're Japanese planes and starts shooting at them, and then the Japanese submarine off the coast starts shooting at everybody else, and I don't know what the hell's going on or why it's happening, and it's not funny, but it's not serious, and this movie sucks. It sucks. I hated it. I really, truly hated it. I don't think this movie should be rehabilitated. It's got an incredible cast. So many great actors are in this. And Spielberg is a master technician. No matter what he's doing, this movie is beautiful to look at. The shots are incredible. The camera movement is stunning. And it's all the service of just a total waste. Because if the movie said, you know what, I'm going to be a drama about paranoia on the West Coast, which a lot of people, including Spielberg, think maybe he should have gone that way, I could still get a few laughs in. Naturally, but that's what my tone will be, but it doesn't do that. And then if it had said, you know what, I'm going to just be a crazy satire and try to make some commentary on American paranoia, but it doesn't stick to that either. It doesn't stick to anything, so it doesn't work, and it sucks. I hate it. I hate it, Jordan.
I'm sorry that you had such a terrible experience, but it sounds really odd, just a misfit for Spielberg. Satire, even, I mean, he does some comedic work, but, especially satire just feels like it's not right for Spielberg. And then I'm wondering, okay, how did he get involved in this project? Now I'm looking at the writers and seeing, okay, Robert Zemeckis was on the screenplay and John Milius. And I don't know, man. It's just, it just sounds like a bad concept from the get-go.
You know how everyone always says Back to the Future is the perfect screenplay, and that screenwriter Bob Gale could basically just quit at that point because he had already written the perfect screenplay? He wrote this, and it's about as far from perfect as you could be, and it makes no sense. With all the talent on hand, I mean, John Williams still did the music here, like he does for almost every Spielberg movie. I mean, this movie should be incredible, and it's so terrible. But I don't regret letting you win at trivia. I don't regret watching it, only for the point that, I've now seen every Spielberg movie before the 21st century. I think I've seen everyone up until the 2010s. So as a completionist, okay, I'm glad I watched it. But as a human being who wants to keep his sanity, I'm not glad I watched it.
Well, at least you got something out of it. You did just remind me, though, we talked about how you let me win at trivia and basically gave me this to give to you as a punishment. I want to say at this point, my mother-in-law, who we honored last time with the brilliant sandwich, the Patreon sandwich that I came up with and that you made and that you ate, she reminded me, I used to win at trivia. I almost forgot this, but back when we were doing classic Japanese movies, she said at least the couple episodes that she listened to, I won handedly. So I don't know, maybe the 90s is just not my thing. Maybe I need to go back to the Japanese classic cinema, or we can just make our trivia battles only revolve around that. So that might be in the works, right? That could be a way you don't have to just give me the battle.
When we moved to the 90s is definitely when you started always losing. You did win some then. I remember there was even a streak where I was getting bummed out because you kept beating me. But basically, right, as soon as we became a 90s show, you were done. You knew nothing anymore. You lost all your knowledge.
I think that's just our shtick. I don't know. That's just part of the goofiness of our new aesthetic or something. I don't know. We'll blame it on that. Just blame the 90s.
It's all the 90s fault.
Well, speaking of things that are ultra 90s, let's get into 1991's Hook.
Bangarang.
Bangarang. Hook, let's do it, man. I texted you. I did not want to watch this movie. I'll just be straight up. Somebody suggested that we cover this, and then we did a Patreon poll asking people what they want us to cover, and Hook was the winner. And it sounded like you were bangarang ready to go on this thing. You watched it probably like 1,000 times, or at least 10 times. And I told you disgust me because I looked and I was like, why is this movie 2 hours and 21 minutes? I don't know if I can get into this. I was like, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. And so finally got into it. And yeah, man, it's different than I remember. And I was surprised by a lot of things. And I just want to dive in. I just want to go into it. So we can just get into the nitty gritty. Unless you have any others set up you want to throw at it.
Yeah, I'm really excited. This is, of all the movies we've covered, I think I've watched this one the most, but I don't think I have watched it since Y2K. I think this was my first 21st century viewing. And yeah, I mean, I'm super pumped. I watched the movie multiple times. I played the SNES game. I listened to the soundtrack a lot. I just did so much. I'm so excited to talk about this movie.
I mean, even though my feelings might not be as disparaging as they were going into this, you still disgust me. I mean, so much time, so much life force given to this. But man, okay, so right up top, this movie opens and we get to watch a badly acted school play, a child's baseball game, which is somewhat uneventful. And I don't know, this movie did not start off well. Well, I'll just say that for me. I was just like, this is not grabbing me. It opens up with just some very odd looking children like staring agape as they watch this badly acted play, and some awkward dialogue between the family as they're watching their daughter perform the Peter Pan play. The youngest daughter is playing Wendy in the play. And then we move on to Robin Williams, and he is a lawyer, and he has no time for his kids or his family. He's taking phone calls in the middle of the play because he's got business to do. And he promises his son he'll be at his baseball game. It's the big game. He's got to be there. He makes an appointment, and he says he's going to miss some of the game, but he promises he'll be there for the rest of it. And so we go into this child's baseball game, man. Like how long does this last, where they're like pitching and hitting and showing like, the different signs, like which, fastball or curveball they're going to do. And we get like the mother in the stands and the bleachers with a young girl watching. Why are all the hats just blue is one question that I had. Like, they're the Blue Jays, but I don't know, it just seemed really strange that they had no emblem on their hat. Did that strike you weird at all?
I didn't even notice that.
It was just like this basic blue hat, out of all the details and the props in this movie. I was like, I guess they ran out of funds by the end of this. Like, we can't put some emblems on these hats. Anyway, yeah. And so Robin Williams, he plays Peter Banning, the lawyer. He misses the game. Of course, he's too busy at work. And when the other team wins and his son is struck out and loses the game, why is the other team yelling 2468, who do we appreciate? Blue Jays, Blue Jays. I guess it's like a crappy like diss at this other team. We appreciate you for losing.
Yeah, it's like the old adage, you're the best player on our team, to somebody on the other team that sucks. I dug it. I was into it. I'm going to hard disagree with the beginning of this movie not working, because I was into it. It establishes what's up with the characters here. It establishes the real world and the place that we're going to leave soon. So I was fine with it, Jordan. I was fine.
I think maybe, my hesitancy coming into this movie is just like, no, I don't want to watch this. That definitely like was in my head for a little bit there in the beginning, but slowly but surely, I was hooked. Pun intended.
Oh, dear.
You like what I did there?
How much more of that am I going to have to endure tonight?
But no, I agree. It does do a good job of setting up, who the characters are, what the conflicts are, and like the issues between the different characters. So I agree to that. I just had a little bit of trouble getting into it, but as we kept churning along, like I said, it hooked me. I was also wondering, man, I'm gonna notice all these little details going through this movie. I know you have like maybe some other existential thoughts to bring to the table later, but like, does Jack have just like these huge teeth marks in his lips? Did you notice this while he's playing baseball? He's got like the biggest gouges in his bottom lip from like his big front teeth. I don't know. It was distracting.
What? What are you even talking about?
Anyway, so they hop on a plane to go to England because they're going back to England to honor someone named Granny Wendy, who's played by Maggie Smith. We find out later. And I had a question for you. So they're on the plane and you hear the pilot's voice. Is that Dustin Hoffman?
It's 100% Captain Hook himself, Dustin Hoffman. That's
okay.
right.
Okay. I was like, that's got to be Dustin Hoffman.
It is, which it makes me, well, it goes into some theories I have later, but I wonder if it was supposed to be Captain Hook, because we know that apparently he can enter our world, so maybe that was him. But also, what's up with these overworked 90s dads that need their wives to tell them, like, you're missing the time with the kids, you're missing it, it's going to be gone soon, and they're like, oh, because at work, what's this workplace he's in? Everyone adores him, right? So it's like shown like, this guy's not bad. He's just invested in the wrong family. Because everyone else adores him at his job where he is this ruthless lawyer who oversees all these corporate takeovers. So I guess he's actually not a good person, but they like him. But his son draws a picture of the plane crashing and everyone smiling with a parachute on, but his dad plummeting to his death, which I enjoyed. That's the same kid from What About Bob? Who, maybe I'll be talking about some philosophy later. He was into some pretty dark philosophies with Bill Murray in that movie. But anyway, I miss that kid.
Talking about the overworked dad, I was like, okay, I'm trying to make fun of this movie. I'm noticing these weird things about this movie, but I'm going to go back and forth this whole time with this movie between how absurd is that? That's really weird. Or like, why did they make that choice? And then for me, it does a lot of times dip into the Spielberg magic where it works and I'm strangely connected to these characters and I feel like he's doing a good job establishing the characters and making me, empathetic or making me reflect on my own life. So, watching this as a kid, obviously I'm thinking of it from the perspective of the kid and like, yeah, maybe my dad, not being there or, the adventure in Neverland and growing through that journey. But this time, man, watching it, I'm connecting with the father figure, being a father myself and being made very uncomfortable at times watching this very nervous dad, this very busy and distracted dad who's gets aggravated at his kids a little too easily. He's freaking out on the plane, tells his kid to grow up, says things like, I told you to do that 100 times, stuff like that. So I'm like, oh man, this is a little hitting a little too close to home for me sometimes, but let's not talk about my issues. What about this movie? Look, fake snow. Why is there fake snow? They're going to England.
Oh no. So it's not just 90s cinema dads. It's Jordan Courtney.
That's right, man. This is real life. This is depicting universal truths here and rubbed me a little too close to home, I have to say.
Oh no!
So, but I did appreciate it in that way where the emotional beats, I feel like they worked, they rang true, and it was just mixed in with a lot of other weird 90s garbage that is also highly entertaining. But I don't know, it's a big old mixed bag in this movie as we go through it, and there's just so much strangeness to it. But I didn't have a problem with the family and especially the moment where the mom talks to the dad, like you mentioned, about missing out on their lives and them, we only have a few short years with them where they want to be around us, then you'll be chasing after them. And I'm like, man, that I mean, as trite and common knowledge as that is, that's very true and does hit close to home, so Well, say what you want to say about it, but I was moved. I was touched.
It does. You're right. It does. Because my kid's about to hit puberty, and I'm just thinking, like, I can tell right now he wants to get in time with me, but when is that going to stop? Is that going to be soon? I hope it's not. But yeah, I feel that stuff is pretty well done.
Don't try and be a hard ass, Nick.
Yeah.
You know you're crying.
No. Let's move on from that. So Jordan,
you went into your son's bedroom after you watched this movie and watched him sleep.
No, actually, he watched the first half with me, and then he said, "This is so boring," and then he left. So that's actually what happened.
I mean, it's a long movie, and it is kind of a slow start. But I mean, I think there's a lot of good stuff once we get past that baseball game. Yeah, let's get into it.
I think these scenes in London, bookending the film, are my favorite ones in the movie. The atmosphere is just really magical, and I feel like. Sure. Yeah, for sure, man. I feel like the promise of these early scenes of like what's coming, what it hints at, the history that it hints at, the magical possibilities. I really like that more than anything else in the movie. And I remember as a kid liking that the best too. And John Williams is playing this mysterious music that really is kind of a bridge into his Harry Potter music in the early 21st century. John Williams soundtracking London at Night is the best thing I think that exists. But I love these scenes in London. You get all this imagery hinting at the Peter Pan story and at Captain Hook. There's little hooks on the latches on the windows. I just love all these scenes, man.
Yeah, it's interesting to say that the most magical part of this movie is when we're still in England in reality. But I guess there's like a subtlety there, and there's more just like an atmosphere, like that house with Granny Wendy, like all that. I agree. It really works. And yeah, it just has like a poetry to it. You get into Neverland and there's just a little bit more like absurdity and like overt 90s-ness. But there's just a little bit more like whimsy here in the England stuff. Not that I didn't like the rest of the movie either, but here we have the introduction to Grandma Wendy and her daughter, Maura, is Peter Banning's wife, this Granny Wendy's daughter.
It's her
right on that?
Granddaughter, I do believe.
Or granddaughter. Okay. I was confused about the relationship because it's like, okay, we have Peter, who's obviously a stand-in for Peter Pan, and then we have Grandma Wendy, who's obviously a stand-in for Wendy, but, they're ages apart. But then, we realize later that Peter was Peter Pan. He grew up and forgot that he was Peter Pan, and Wendy has, I guess, told him this story that she found him, adopted him, and raised him. I don't know. It's just like I love all the mystery there and him like discovering who he was, and that whole scene of like the realization, like, oh, I was Peter Pan, and having to come to terms with that.
You're jumping too far ahead, Jordan. We're still in London.
Okay, I'm jumping too far.
The camera movements that Spielberg does in London, the way that he uses shadows, which again is going to the Peter Pan legend and his shadow getting away from him, but it's so beautiful, man. I can watch Steven Spielberg film shadows all day long.
Well, we have the scene that's hitting too close to home for me. Peter yelling at the kids when he's on the phone, Maura's instruction to him about missing the time, and I'm just like, damn, it's just too close to home. No, stop, Mr. Spielberg, stop. Don't make me feel things. But then, they leave to go to the ceremony to honor Grandma Wendy, and I'm like, wait, who's watching the kids? Like, it's revealed later that it's, Toodles is there. I guess he's just like, I don't know, the butler, somebody who lives with Grandma Wendy, and then we have this other lady who's like the governess or the housekeeper or something. I don't know. But they seem to be like mostly absent. I'm just like, wait, they're just leaving these kids. Like, where is Toodles when you need him? I don't know.
He lost his marbles.
So they go to this ceremony and Peter's giving this speech to honor Wendy, how she took him in from the cold and found him parents and all this stuff, and like basically saying he was an orphan, and he's addressing this crowd. What about the moment where like the crowd stands up, and like earlier in his speech he said like, he's a lawyer. I guess I don't have anything in common with most of you. And then they all stand up and he says, I guess we do have something in common. We're orphans. I was like, wait, what? Aren't you addressing don't you know you're addressing the orphans of the people that she brought in from the cold as well? I don't know. It seemed really a really strange comment to make. Does that make any sense to you?
Well, the tone of that scene is a little weird because it's like an extremely heartfelt scene about Granny Wendy opening a children's hospital, and it really doesn't have a lot to do with the rest of the movie other than we need a diversion for the adults to go to so the children can be kidnapped by Captain Hook.
Yeah, let's talk about that. Man, that's got to be one of my favorite scenes in the movie too. And it's just pretty freaky. Parts of this movie enter places where I'm just not expecting it to go, with the tone and the seriousness and kind of I don't know, some of the, I guess, horror, because it dips into a little freaky horror moment here where they return home and the kids have been taken. There's this scratch all over the wall and the lighting's really weird and green.
Like Freddy Krueger was there.
Yeah. And the governess, does she have blood on her? I thought I saw blood on her forehead
no.
at one point, but I don't think she did. But she's, at the same time, she's still screaming, the children are screaming. They're screaming. I'm like, oh my God, this is intense, man. But it's really well done. It's hooking me. It's still pulling me in. Hook, line, and sinker.
Yeah, and even the shot of the children in their beds right before Hook comes and the sheets go flying off of them. Yeah, it's pretty freaky stuff.
Yeah, it's like a Nightmare on Elm Street moment.
But that's what I'm saying. Maybe that's why I enjoy these London scenes so much. Just the mystery of London at night. Sometimes the possibilities are a little scary. Maybe Captain Hook's going to come through the window and kidnap you. You just never know. But I love those scenes. Again, I'm finding myself really engaged in the movie now up to this point. For sure. Just like I was when I was a kid. And now, when the police come, and you get a Phil Collins cameo. The policeman is Phil Collins, which is amazing. Okay.
I didn't realize that. That's awesome. We have some other interesting cameos in this movie, too, we're going to talk about.
Yes, for sure. But Phil Collins can help them. He goes out into the night air and leaves them in the house alone. And here's something I didn't notice that well when I was a kid, but John Williams. Jack.
Wait,
and then
Peter.
God, why do I keep saying Jack? Jack's the kid.
Because he played Jack and Jack.
No.
Directed by Francis Ford Coppola.
My brain's turning into goo there.
The
Jack,
son's name
Peter,
is Jack.
Pete, Jim.
Peter Jackson. It's Peter Jackson.
Well, it makes it even worse that John Williams scored this film and Robin Williams starred in this film. And that, I'm just going to say Robin Williams from now on. Yeah. That'll save me from getting confused. And save our listeners from getting confused by me.
This is one of those few movies where I feel like I could refer to him as Peter and not just the actor's name. But I'll stick with Robin Williams so we're on the same page.
Let me just say, too, how do you feel about Robin Williams? What's your relationship to him as an actor?
I mean, how can you not love Robin Williams? To me, the 90s would not be the 90s without Robin Williams. Mrs. Doubtfire, Jack. I mean, say what you want about Jack and Coppola's career at that point, but I grew up loving Jack. I loved that movie. And Patch Adams, and all his comedic work is great, but he does a lot of great dramatic roles too later in his career. And I feel like this movie is kind of, I don't know if you could say it's overlooked for the acting, because I feel like a lot of people pass it up and deride it, and it's called uneven, and it's not a great Spielberg film or whatever. But if we're going to talk about Robin Williams, he is great in this role. He does a great job on both sides of the fence, where he's playing the serious, frustrated, nervous dad. I feel like he's great. I buy it. I buy everything that he's saying. I relate to it. He's a flawed human. He presents that well. And then he becomes kind of later in the movie, he becomes the Robin Williams we all know and expect and love, played the genie in Aladdin, so he just fits right in with basically being a big kid just like he was in Jack. But yeah, man, like both sides of the fence, I feel like he just knocks it out of the park. He's great. He just has so much emotion and commitment to the role, and just really, I don't know, anchors the whole thing. I think he's awesome. What about you?
I'm really glad you said that. I was scared I was going to have to open up a can of verbal whoop ass, but I didn't, man. It's good to hear that. I will say I'm going to Gen X your millennial ass, though, a little bit by saying my earliest memories of Robin Williams are from Mork and Mindy, which I loved when I was a small child. And I don't even think I understood what was going on a lot of the times. But he said, "Nanu, Nanu," and I thought that was really funny. And I loved him in that. And then one day, my cousin Jessica was babysitting me. And I think it's the only time she babysat me. And it's because 5 minutes after my mom left, she said, "Hey, do you want to watch a funny movie?" And of course I said yes, because she's still like my coolest cousin, right? She like works in Vegas right now. She's awesome. She showed me Good Morning Vietnam.
Oh,
I don't
nice.
remember how old I was. I wasn't very old, but I laughed hysterically the whole time. I loved him so much in that movie. I just could not comprehend how he never ran out of funny stuff to say. It just seemed like every time he talked, it was hilarious. And I loved him. And of course, in true young me fashion, Jessica said, "Just don't tell your mom that I let you watch this." And of course, as soon as I got in the car, I said, "Mom, I watched Good Morning Vietnam. It was so funny." And Jessica never babysat me again. But
Bummer.
I've loved him since then. And he did go through a period where I wasn't really digging his movies. I'd say late 90s, early 2000s. And it kind of bummed me out. But then he did some dark comedies right near the end of his life. He did one called World's Greatest Dad, which is actually directed by Bobcat Goldthwait, where I think he's amazing in the movie. I think that's his best performance.
I haven't seen that one.
It's really dark. Basically, his son is doing some weird masturbation act where he accidentally kills himself.
Oh my gosh.
Robin Williams goes into the room and sets things up to fake it as if his son, I guess, committed suicide, and then writes this fake journal that his son wrote about his life, where everyone's like, "Wow, this kid was really deep. We never saw these layers when he was alive." And he just keeps putting on this ruse that his son was like this great kid, and really it's all garbage. Like, his son was just terrible. His son was an awful person. It's a really dark comedy, but it's really funny. And
that sounds interesting.
yeah, and then we lost him, and it's a bummer too, because I have a lot of affinity for him just because I think he was really one of the first actors to champion video games. I mean, he named his daughter Zelda. He did commercials for Nintendo with his daughter playing Zelda games. And I mean, all the kids who made this movie, I know Spielberg didn't have the greatest time, and I think he was really getting annoyed with the kids on set, and you can kind of tell at certain points that he might not be having the most fun. But according to all the kids, Robin Williams was like holy to them. They basically said he was exactly who you wanted him to be. They all looked up to him so much, and you can tell in the scenes.
You can tell that he's having a great time with those kids too. Like, he's having a blast being a lost boy and just being a big kid, and skateboarding and jumping around and twirling and crowing. And all right, but we're jumping ahead. So is it me? Let's get back to the movie. So we have the scene with Granny Wendy and Robin Williams. The police leave and they're trying to kind of figure out what to do next with the missing kids. Is it me, or is Granny Wendy not coming on to Peter? Like, she's still got it bad for this boy.
Oh yeah, for sure. She never lost it.
She sends the wife into the other room, and then she starts to move in. Like, Maggie Smith is uncomfortably close to Robin Williams' face in some scenes in this moment. It was just like, yeah, man, she still got it bad.
Well, it's crazy. We always think of her as an actress as looking the same for so many years and like not aging. But in reality, she was only in her 50s when they shot this movie. They had to use a lot of makeup on her to make her look this old. So she really wasn't that far in age, I think, from Robin Williams at the time.
That is some great looking makeup, like some, good job done there, because like in my mind, I'm like, oh yeah, it's Maggie Smith. She's old, like it looks like how she looks now, or, maybe a few
watch
years
Downton
ago,
Abbey
10 years
25
ago.
years later, she looks exactly the same.
Right. So I was like, okay, she's always looked this old, but no, oh man. Yeah, that is interesting. It just didn't dawn on me that she would be 50 at this time.
Yes.
But, as many things I want to make fun of here and, talk about, like, Granny having it bad for Peter. At the same time, like I said, it goes into these magical Spielberg moments. It pulls me in. Again, the idea of Peter discovering in the midst of this crisis that he was once Peter Pan, and like that's how he's going to solve this problem. Like that moment where she reveals it to him, and he's just like, I'm not ready to hear this. And she tells him, don't you know who you are? Like, that's great stuff, man. Like, that's a magical moment. I was moved.
Yes. I think we're both, I don't know, I'm going to put words in your mouth here, so you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we're both suckers for anything where it's like someone was once something great or some legendary figure or just something wonderful, and then they lose that or they forget about that. And then it's like, remember who you are. And then all this magic happens. I'm a sucker for that, man. That stuff always makes me tear up.
What are some other movies or works that you can think of that bring that kind of thing into it? I'm trying to think off the top of my head, because you're right. I am a sucker for that. I mean, it's almost like, I don't know if Tolkien goes into that specifically, but that whole, like, you're meant for greatness and that kind of thing. It feels akin to like Frodo or
Aragorn.
Or
he's the king.
Yeah,
this whole time, and he's just forsaken that and gone off into the wilderness.
Yeah, that's true. Maybe that's where I'm thinking where it's drawing me to that.
Or even like we can go Disney here. I'll champion the original animated Lion King whenever, because his dad tells him, Simba, remember who you are. It's a pretty good movie. I wasn't a little kid when it came out, but I'm not going to pretend like I didn't watch it a lot of times. I thought it was pretty good.
No, for sure. Like just those whole themes, emotionally resonant, makes you feel connected to the characters. It makes you look at yourself and question your own destiny and your own desire for greatness and those kind of things. So I'm with you, man. So yeah, like I said, there's so many things in this movie that just make me go back to feeling like a kid, and I feel like that's probably partly the desire of this project is, for the kids that connect to it. But obviously the main adult character, Peter, in this, his whole journey, his whole arc is going from, having lost his childlikeness to finding it again,
For sure. And speaking of child, something that kind of creeped me out in what happens next, Peter goes up to the room where his kids were kidnapped from, and then he sees a light on the yonder horizon. It gets bigger and bigger, but it's just a little wee Tinkerbell fairy. It's Julia Roberts as Tinkerbell, and what I think is probably, to me, the worst element of the film. She was filmed in front of green screen most of the time, and I think Spielberg really kind of failed to incorporate her well into the movie. Watching it now, it feels like she is just off by herself, and then they just inserted some shots of her every now and then, and she's never really truly a part of things other than a few of her solo scenes with Robin Williams. I've made that sound like a porn, but that kind of is where it feels like it's headed a few times.
It does feel like it's headed to Pornoland a few times between them. So, yeah, I totally forgot about that element of this movie, too. It was like, man, Tinkerbell has it bad, too. Like, Granny Wendy and Tinkerbell and Peter, like, they're all going to get up in there. Man.
Oh, yeah. Apparently that is the way that they shot this. Not like a porn, but they shot her on a green screen by herself. And she was going through some tough times then. She had just literally been a runaway bride and was getting dunked by the media. And then she basically had to do this movie where she was just alone against a green screen while people were doing their scenes together somewhere else. So she got nicknamed, what was it? Tinker Hell. That was the nickname that she was given on set because apparently she was acting out a lot.
Oh, wow. See, I didn't just to combat you there, I didn't really have an issue with her in the movie or her performance or the effects even. I felt like, they're decent for 91. Like, yeah, they don't look great at times, but there's a little Spielberg magic, and as far as like, the scene where she flies into the dollhouse and then he opens up the dollhouse and you have her in there, how they shot her obviously like on a set with giant Barbies and stuff. to make it look like she was small. So yeah, like there's other scenes where, once they're in Neverland, she's flying around, she's beating up pirates and helping him save the day or give him advice and stuff. Like, I don't know, I felt like for the most part they incorporated her pretty well. But yeah, just the porno stuff was what threw me off, especially when we get to the end. I don't know, we'll talk a little bit about that. And when she
you got
gets
a thing
big.
for Tinkerbell, don't you? I see what's going on here.
I normally don't like Julia Roberts, honestly. I don't normally think she's like that attractive of a woman. But in this, she's got the little pixie haircut. She's got the little sparkle in her eyes. I don't know, man. She's...
We're like exact opposite Julia Roberts stands, and I'm punching myself in the nuts for saying the word stan. But I had a huge crush on her in the 90s. To be honest with you, and I liked her in everything I've seen her in, except this.
But to be fair, you had a huge crush on everybody in the 90s.
Yes, because in a minute there's going to be some mermaids, and I remember having a crush on all 4 mermaids. So there you go. But anyway, let's get to the plot here. Let's get to the plot. Enough weird Julia Roberts stuff. So she sprinkles some stuff happens that we can just gloss over because we can't go over every single minor detail. But she eventually kind of conks him out, sprinkled some fairy dust on him, which is, again, getting to what we were just talking about. I hope that's all she did with him. And then she takes him to Neverland. They fly off to Neverland, and he wakes up.
And those bed sheets, man. Yeah. Between that time of him flying there and waking up, like a lot of things could have happened. I don't
know. That's right. So she takes him to Neverland, and the first place we visit is Captain Hook's ship. He wakes up there. She makes him dress up in pirate garb so that he doesn't immediately get murdered by pirates. And he finds Captain Hook is holding his kids hostage in a net. He immediately tries to rescue them. It fails because he doesn't remember he's Peter Pan. He's just a lawyer, and he can't climb. What are the 3 things he can't do, Jordan, that he needs to learn how to do?
He can't fight, he can't fly, and he can't crow.
That's right. He can't do any of that stuff. And this is our
tub of lard.
And this is our introduction to Dustin Hoffman as the titular character. Yes, because this movie is not called Peter Pan. It is called Hook.
And there's a reason for that. So let's camp out on Captain Hook here and talk about Hoffman and his performance. So
I'm all for this being our longest episode. Patrons, you wanted this, so we're going to give it to you.
That's right. Let's do it. So what do you think of Hook? What do you think of Hoffman in this performance? I'm dying to know.
It's a really bizarre performance. When I was a kid, I didn't think a lot of it. I'd seen Dustin Hoffman in a decent amount of stuff. And then as I got older, I'd say in college, he really became one of my favorite actors. His performance in Straw Dogs is one of my favorite performances by anyone. I mean, he's great in The Marathon Man, which we've talked about before.
Yeah, man. Marathon Man. Classic.
So this is really an interesting role for him. It's weird. He's got, of course, the wig on. He's got the crazy eyebrows. The crazy teeth.
Eyebrows, man. The eyebrows were distracting. Like, talk about freaking some hairy eyes, dude.
And I have a philosophical speech about Captain Hook that I'm going to give a little later. Actually, it's more of a call and response that I want to have with you. But
okay,
it's really kind of some dark stuff. This is a suicidal Captain Hook who just really wants to fight Peter Pan, and he wants to have a war. Of course, the people he wants to have a war with are small children and Robin Williams, which is kind of weird. And again, I'll get to that later. But it's a weird performance, but I do feel like in the context of this movie, it works for me. I do enjoy it. And his voice is so weird. It's just a really weird voice that he decides to go with.
It's a weird voice. It's a weird performance. It kind of reminded me of what you said in our last episode about Gary Oldman in True Romance, where it's like the worst performance and the best performance simultaneously.
Exactly.
It's just such a show-stopping weird thing. And the material is weird too. Like you said, there's moments where he becomes suicidal because he's so disappointed that Peter Pan is just this fat old lawyer now, and he doesn't have like an adventure in a war to take on, that he's gonna kill himself. Like, I did not remember this at all in this movie. So when we got to that scene, I was like, wait, what? He's gonna shoot himself?
Yes,
So
it's
crazy.
a lot more surprising watching it now. For some reason, when I was a kid, I was just like, "Oh, this guy's weird."
Right. Oh, it's just an awkward. Yeah, he's just strange Captain Hook. He's just crazy. Like as a kid, I can remember thinking that. But now I'm like, wait, they put this in this kids movie? What?
And Shmi, played by Bob Hoskins, who's man, the kind of costumes that Bob Hoskins had to get himself into in the '90s between this and
Right.
Super Mario Brothers
And Super Mario Brothers, yeah. He's good. He's good though. He's fun. You know.
Oh,
he
I
works
love him in
as
this movie. Yeah,
the,
yeah.
The first mate. Yeah.
He's great
He's
in this
great.
movie, for sure. And, he's, don't try to stop me, Smee. Don't try to stop me, Smee. Try to stop me, Smee. While he's holding a gun against his own head, right? And Smee has to wrestle the gun away from him, which is really shocking watching it now. I'm like, man, like,
Yeah.
little kids are watching this movie. What kind of example is Captain Hook setting for them?
Right. I mean, because
That's
he ends up becoming the kid's mentor later. Like all that stuff was weird too. But I did not remember that either. To go back and set this up a little bit. So Captain Hook is about to just kill Peter Pan. Like, oh, he's a fat old lawyer. He can't fly. Just kill him. Kill them all. He's going to kill these children. He's going to kill this man. Just send him over the plank. But Tinkerbell convinces him to give him 3 days to become the Peter Pan he used to be. And he can have this, great all-out war with him. Then Peter Pan is accidentally knocked overboard into the water, into the ocean, and he's tied up because they're about to throw him off the plank. And some mermaids appear and start doing mouth-to-mouth with Peter Pan. And doesn't this get sensual and kind of sexual for a moment? And I
Dude,
don't remember this either.
I gotta tell you, going back through Spielberg's movies, and especially after finally watching 1941, he's like the most low-key, horny director. Once you get to his early 2000s movies, like the amount of sexual activity going on in the background of Minority Report and Catch Me If You Can, it's crazy.
Yeah, there's a lot of weird stuff there. But yeah, I mean, we talked about the male fantasy and true romance. This had me thinking like, man, there's some Freudian level stuff going on here with like Spielberg. I know he wasn't the writer, but I'm just gonna, I just wanted to assume that I'm gonna project all this onto Spielberg because he's the most known property and person involved in this. He's the director, so it's his authorial vision coming through. But I'm like, man, there's some Freudian stuff going on here between like the father figures and the mother figures and the kids and all the relationships going on there. And then there's just these, he even says with Tinkerbell, is this a Freudian nightmare? You're some projection of my mother with great legs. And then he starts making out with these mermaids underwater. I'm just like, what is this kids movie doing, man? It's crazy.
It is crazy. But the mermaids give him air, and then we get really, I think, some pretty stunning imagery where he gets pulled up from the water, and he's on top of a great precipice overlooking Neverland. And I like I guess it was Mott paintings there. I thought those looked great. But now we have our introduction to the Lost Boys, and they're a rambunctious crew chasing this old man, Peter Pan, around. It's a really wacky scene. But it leads up to one of my favorite scenes in the movie that I thought was really powerful.
I just want to stop real quick, too, and say the treehouse sets in this movie are like the epitome of anything 90s to me. Because you've got like these ramps and like pathways through these trees and tree houses as they're like skateboarding with like skateboards with sails on them as they're like ride the rails around these freaking tree houses, and all these kids like sleeping in these tents hung up in the trees with little lanterns and stuff. Like all that stuff rules. Like that, all that stuff is so nostalgic and brings me back to just making me feel like a kid in the 90s again. So that stuff, like the scale of those sets is awesome. Is classic.
Agreed. I love how like the four seasons are represented in this one little area.
Oh yeah, with the snow, yeah, in the autumn, yeah.
So the kids chase him around and finally kind of get him cornered. And then the coolest person who's ever lived, Rufio from this movie Hook, played by Dante Basco, comes out with his awesome...
Oh!
He comes out with his awesome red and black skunk hair, and he has some insults for this so-called Peter Pan and disses him and draws a line with his sword in the dirt and says, "Whoever thinks this is Peter Pan, stay over there. If you don't think he is, come over here." And of course, the first person to walk up next to him is Peter Pan himself, Robin Williams, because he doesn't believe that he's Peter Pan, which I thought was really funny. But eventually, all of the kids go to the other side, and then this, what did you think about this? With the John Williams music playing, it's weird if you just kind of think about it too much, but I really dug when the kid gets him to kneel down and puts his hands and feels his face with the tips of his fingers, and this beautiful John Williams music is playing, and he says, "Oh, Peter, there you are." And then a few of the kids run over, especially Thudbutt, the best kid of any kid in any movie, the cutest kid ever. And they all go over there, and this really powerful music plays. And I love it.
Damn it, Spielberg. You're making me feel things again.
I know, so many feelings.
At the same time, I'm like, dude, that kid's fingers are probably really dirty. There's no hand sanitizer out in this
pink
place.
eye time.
He's probably been digging in his butt. Like, you're about to get pink eye, and he's touching all over your face, man. Like, he's all up in his grill. I'm just like, that's a little too much, like, hands on face for me. But at the same time, man, it's that weird crossover between like strange and odd and kind of like comically bad, but at the same time moving and magical, and it's got the John Williams score. So yeah, I'm with you, man. I was feeling things.
I'll say though, after this, up until close to the end for me, this is where the movie kind of loses its way a little, just with the pacing, because we cut back to Captain Hook's ship. We get the scene where we talked about already, where he's thinking about killing himself, and then we get the subplot where he's gonna try to make Peter's kids love him and betray him to be Captain Hook's kids. And I mean, it's all well and good, and then we cut back to scenes of Peter trying to figure things out back with the Lost Boys. But the pacing up to this point, it's just, even though it's taken its time, we're like an hour into this 2 hour and 21 minute movie by this point. But for me, the pacing gets a little choppier and slower. I think this is really where my kid checked out of the movie, my 2000s kid, as he calls himself, who's way more into TikTok videos than a full-length movie. He kind of pieced out by this point, and I couldn't really get on him for it, because this is where I had to fight checking my phone too.
I see what you mean about the pacing. It does get a little less action oriented here. Like, I don't know, I feel like they should be building up this kind of moment for the training of Peter Pan and focusing more on that, but then they get into the weird subplot of Hook pretending that he's going to be this father figure. And don't get me wrong, in some ways it does work.
I agree. In some ways it does work, yes.
But it is odd and weird, and it like dips into these themes. Like, I don't know like where it's going. Like, there's so many different, like I said, Freudian levels and themes to this movie, and it feels so like oddly personal. Like, okay, the writer or the director or whoever is envisioning all this, okay, maybe they feel like an old dad who's lost touch with his kids and needs to get back in touch with his kids, and here's this like maybe cool stepdad character played by Dustin Hoffman as Captain Hook who's stealing the show, or
he's
but
a
then
bad
there's
influence.
But then there's all this stuff about being Peter Pan and like finding yourself, and you're a grown up who's lost touch with their inner kid and all that. So it's just like a lot going on. It's a lot.
It is. So
I feel that it kind of loses its way in the midst of all that stuff.
And I don't know if any of the full aspects of it don't work. I mean, there are certain things that don't work, but I mean, I'm with you. It's strong how it shows that he's neglected his son so much that his son is tempted by Captain Hook.
Right. I dig that.
Again, like, it's not like it doesn't work. It's just, it almost makes it seem like this would have been better as a limited TV series at this point. Not that was a big thing in 1991 when this was released, but there's just so much stuff, especially for a kid's movie where you're trying to get the kids to sit down for 2 hours and 20 minutes. But, I don't remember any kids I watched this with in the early 90s struggling to get through it. So
yeah, I mean, all in all, I didn't struggle. I felt like it went by, a pretty decent clip. The pacing, as far as like the structure goes, feels weird here, but I was still engaged, and I was still like, what the hell is going on in this movie? So just for the sheer like amount of stuff being thrown at you, I think there's enough there to grab your attention, because I don't know, just all that stuff with Hook and the kids. And I love the scene where he starts teaching them about how your parents don't love you. They only read to you at night to put you to bed because they want to, you know, get rid of you and do all their fun things that they do when they're asleep. And I'm like, hey, he's not lying, dude. Like, he's actually telling the truth for sure. But we kind of lose track of the girl character, Maggie. She's really only in a few scenes, and then we start to focus on the son, you know, because he's, you know, the biggest conflict between Peter Pan is with him and the boy Jack. And so Hook can really sense this and really leans into kind of stealing Jack over to his side of things. And, you know, at one point he even dresses up like Captain Hook. Like, he's got the whole wig and suit and boots and everything on. It was like such a weird choice too. Just like, what is this?
Oh, the little wig that he wears and the little hat.
Yeah, that's so strange.
It's wild.
What about the little girl Maggie? At one point we had the scene where she's singing a lullaby for Hook and the pirates, like as she's like, you know, singing about being alone, and she's off like on the dock somewhere, and all the pirates are kind of being like wooed and teary-eyed over it. I was just like, what is this? This is so strange. Like, why? There's so much in this movie. It's like some of it is just so odd. Like, it doesn't really work, but there's still like a lot of awesomeness to it too. Like, what about the silhouette of the treehouse island as they're all going to sleep, and there's like 3 moons on the horizon in the background? Like, there's just some beautiful stuff in this.
Yes.
I feel like it kind of gets overlooked in Spielberg's work just because it's got so much goofiness to it too.
It's beautiful shots, man. So many beautiful shots in this movie. Lots of painterly shots. I do think it's some of his most stunning visual work.
Yeah, for sure. And then, you know, to bring it back to the feels, Jack smashing all the clocks for all the promises his dad didn't keep. I'm getting emotional again, man. Like, that was some serious stuff. Like, this is a kid's movie. And he's like, you know, for all the promises you didn't keep, for all the times you weren't there. You know, it's kind of cathartic in a way. You're like, yeah, you showed your dad, Peter Pan. He wasn't there for you. Like, you kind of, I feel for him. I mean, yeah, Captain Hook's just like an evil dude kind of stirring up for him, but you're kind of on his side in a way, in some ways, you know? It's just weird, man. It's making me feel conflicted.
Yeah, I was glad that my kid lost interest by this point and not watched this scene, right? Yeah, Dad.
He's like, yeah, Dad. Yeah.
Yeah, again, like, I agree. There's a lot of silliness there, but at the same time, it works. It does get you in the feelings, man. It does. I can't argue with you. I'm really surprised at how much we're gelling right now, man.
I know. I really am, too. I thought I was just going to rip on this movie and hate it so bad.
I thought you were, too. And honestly, like, I'd have, like, so much sentimental value attached to this movie, even though I hadn't watched it in a long time, just because of the time in which I watched it. But I just thought, you know what, I've got nostalgia attached to this that's making it easier for me to watch. And Jordan, I don't think he necessarily has that, so he's going to hate it. So you just keep saying stuff you like that I legitimately watched it again this time and liked too. So this is beautiful, Jordan. This is beautiful.
Beautiful. Synergy, man. Synergy.
I'm having a good time with you right now, man. It's a beautiful night. Beautiful night.
Peter, he transforms. You know, we get the moment where he remembers finally, and his childhood and his beginnings and everything. He finally remembers he's Peter Pan. Turns into Peter Pan, but he's really just Robin Williams, because now all I can really see is like the Robin Williams we all know and love having a grand old time being goofy with these kids, calling and crowing and running and jumping and skateboarding and slam dunking and flipping and stuff. I'm just like, this is just, you know, the genie from Aladdin, like in human form, basically.
He's like the ultimate 90s kid. But then again, get to the feelings. How powerful is the moment where Rufio comes at him with his sword, and you're like, oh man, it's on now. Because we've seen that Rufio kind of resents him earlier. They have the big food fight scene we didn't talk about, the delicious looking icing pies, where he chucks a coconut at him. But in this scene, he comes at him with the sword, and then he bends down onto his knees and passes the sword to Peter, again with amazing John Williams music playing. And it's so emotional and powerful. I love that part so much, man.
How did we not talk about the food fight scene and the imaginary food? I feel like that's the one element of this movie that always stuck with me as a kid, you know, where they open up the dishes and there's nothing in it and they're all pretending. But did that work for you this time as much as it probably did when you were a kid?
Yeah, when I was a kid, I always thought, man, those icing pies look so delicious. But watching it
Right.
now, I will say when they're trading insults, I was over that this time about 2 seconds into it.
Yeah, it went on for a while and it got old fast, but I'm sure in the 90s it was hilarious. You maggot eating fart face and all this stuff, you know.
I think we were all just trying to figure out what they were actually saying to one another because it's so rapid fire.
Right. Like, I want to use that insult on the playground tomorrow.
Yes. But whenever he flicks the quote unquote imaginary food at Rufio and it turns real because we see that he's starting to believe. I mean, that did work for me, and it was fun when they're throwing the food at each other. So again, like, yeah, there's goofy stuff, but it works.
You're imagining, Peter. Yeah.
Yes.
I would say for the most part, I mean, especially Vasco as Rufio, like he's doing a great job as Rufio, and you know, like you said, the kind of the leader of this pack who's kind of usurped, and he's bitter, but then he has the turn where he comes and he supports him. Like, he's doing a great job. I feel like as a kid actor, like he really knocks it out of the park. And most of the other kids are decent. You know, they're not. I wouldn't say like anyone's necessarily stand out as terrible. They're not all Rufio, of course, and nobody can have the skunk hair except for me in middle school. I think I had the skunk hair for a session there, and I don't know if it was inspired by Hook or not. I think there was a fad there in the mid 90s where it's like, yeah, you gotta dye the top of your hair orange but leave the bottom of your hair your natural color. And when they or I guess most kids had like the blonde highlights and stuff, but when I did it, it was just like flat out orange. Like they called me the skunk because it looks so weird. But anyway,
amazing.
But so now he's the pan, and we get Julia Roberts. Like you said, she's not well integrated in this movie, at least according to Nick. But here we have her turn life-size Tink because she, this is her wish. She wants to have this one wish where she gets to kiss Peter and tells him that she loves him. And man, it's getting sexual and hot and heavy again between them. And I was just like, wait a minute, I forgot about this. What is this? Where are we going?
Because it seems like she is trying to have sex with him. Like, if this scene
sure.
had just gone along with what she wanted to happen, it's 100% going toward that.
Yeah, they're going to be up in one of those nets in one of those tree houses.
It's going to turn into the Blue Lagoon, for sure.
Putting out the firelight, telling all the Lost Boys to go to bed, look the other way. But yeah, man, this is odd. This is strange, but she loves him, but he says, I love Maura, his wife. Oh yeah, he's married, but she's after him. She's still after him, even with that knowledge. But this is more twisted than I remember as a kid. Just again, we're kind of making fun here, but back with the feels, man, she looks so heartbroken, and Julia Roberts looks so beautiful in this moment that I am just like torn for her. Like she's pining for this man and she can't have him, and he's been gone for so long, and he's finally back and he has to leave, and like she's also this fairy, trapped in this tiny body, and she has this moment where she gets to be a big person. It's just, I don't know, man, it worked for me at the same time, even though it was so kind of weird and twisted.
I gotta agree with you. Even though I was saying that to me she works, probably that's the element that works worse in the movie. I'm with you on everything you just said. I agree 100%. This is baffling to me.
It is baffling. It's a strange moment, but somehow it just works. And it's just like those little things, like the mermaid moment, like all that stuff. It's weird. It gets sexual, a little like just too much for this kid's movie, but there's some magic to it too. So I don't know, there's just like a touch that Spielberg has that he brings in these kind of things. And I'm just like, oh man, like I'm torn for this character. I don't know, man. Like she's this little fairy, but It works. It's freaking Julia Roberts. And yeah, I can't think of a time where I've thought she looked like more beautiful. And I've always kind of said she looks like an alien, but here she just looks gorgeous. I don't know.
Yeah, and whenever he rebuffs her advances and she's like, okay, well, you got to go save your kids now. It's time to get on mission. And he's like, well, but I feel a little bad. And she tells him, like, get out of here, silly ass. I remember thinking when I was a kid, I can't believe she called him silly ass. But that's straight from the books, man. That's straight from J.M. Barrie's writing. That's what she used to call him.
All right. Wow. I didn't know that.
Incredible.
Well, my next note was, what the F? Little Jack is dressed up like Hook with the hair. They went all out on this, but we already kind of talked about that. Next, we get into the big pirate fight. So, on one hand, this is just, again, like more odd choices and weird tone stuff. You have this big pirate fight. You know, Peter comes to save the kids, and then, you know, the Lost Boys, you know, jump aboard, and there's just this all-out war between the pirates and the Lost Boys. So on one hand, you have these kids like squirting pirates with paint, and the fat kid like bowling ball rolling over everyone, like knocking them down like bowling pins. Butt. And then on the other hand, you have like Rufio and Peter slicing people up with swords and presumably killing these pirates too. So it's just like some darkness like mixed in with all this weird lighthearted banter. What did you make of that? What were your thoughts on this pirate fight?
I think of everything in the movie that maybe worked for me when I was a kid that didn't work now. This final fight overall doesn't really work for me, just because now I'm thinking like, okay, all these pirates are grown-ups and they have swords, and the kids have like marbles and eggs, and they should all just be immediately slaughtered by these grown-ups, and instead they beat them. But then some of the kids do have swords, and they're stabbing the adults. And some of the adults are stabbing the kids. And it's just really, really weird, man.
Yeah, it is weird. I don't know how you make this work. I don't know how you'd go back and fix any of that. Because they needed some real action, obviously, to have like people with swords and sword fighting and stuff. But you're right. It's like those moments in the, you know, like we talked about Night of the Hunter on our bonus episode last time. So if you're interested in bonus content, sign up for Patreon. But there's moments in that movie and other movies where it's like the bad guy's about to get the kids, but then like they get away and the bad guy just kind of stops and does, like, he has the chance to defeat the children and capture them or whatever, but he just kind of stops. And it's the same thing here, which is like the pirates are like running at these kids with swords, but then they throw eggs at them, so then they just stop. So it's like, what? I don't know. It just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, watching it as a grown-up, more steeped in reality, I guess. Yeah, it's a little harder to take these scenes, for sure.
Maybe we need to be, you know, more childlike and suspend our disbelief. I don't know.
Use our imaginations. Yeah.
Use our imagination more, yeah. But one of my questions... All right, so we have, you know, Rufio is one of the kids with the swords. He's, you know, on Peter's side, you know, helping him fight, and he faces off against Hook. And, you know, because at one point Peter says, no, you know, leave Hook to me, he's mine. But then the little girl is in trouble, so he has to go and save his daughter. So Rufio gets to take a shot at Hook, and so they start to fight. Why does Hook say Rufio like the Lost Boys say Rufio? Because like Dustin Hoffman's like, maybe he watched some dailies from, you know, when they introduced the character, so he starts saying Rufio, Rufio. Like, I don't know, man. It's so weird.
I'm gonna actually defend the film's logic here. So he's been interacting with these Lost Boys for possibly millennia of their time there. He's gone into their area because we find out later that he burned Peter's old house in the Lost Boys village after Peter left to become an adult in the real world. And he also just seems to be fairly omniscient. He knows a lot about Peter's life back in the real world, so it didn't surprise me. And
yeah, he was an airplane pilot. Like, he's everywhere.
Yeah, and I feel like there's like kind of an evil satisfaction he takes there, and kind of being like this dark, evil, satanic father figure, where he's going to introduce Rufio to the sweet embrace of death, which is what happens in another incredibly emotional moment where Rufio gets the upper hand for about a half a second. But I do enjoy for most of their fight that it's like, this is an adult fighting a child, and the adult is way better at sword fighting than this child and bigger than this child. And he's besting him for most of their, 2 or 3 minute fight until Rufio gets the upper hand for a split second. And then Hook pulls off a little stunner move and then kills him, stabs him in the chest. And we get the awesome shot of Peter flying in and they go, no! It's incredible. And then he holds a dying Rufio in his arms. And Rufio says, I wish I would have had a dad like you. Jordan.
As his son Jack stands off to the side, looking at all that Peter is doing to save him, looking at this supposed father figure in Hook that has taken him in, how he's killed this child, and how Rufio looks up to Peter. Yeah, man, like all the feels, and so many Freudian levels to this. It's insane. I don't know. I don't even know how to parse this, but it just feels like there's so much going on here within these, father figure roles and son roles that my mind is about to explode.
Yes. And now Peter and Hook finally have a real face-off. Peter's kids are all firmly on his side now. And it's a fight where Peter really continuously beats Hook and then tries to let him go free. And then Hook, he's like, no, we're going to keep fighting until you kill me, basically. Until that finally, I think after the third feint of him being like, okay, we're going to leave now. Me and my kids are going to leave and we never want to see you again. And then he's like, oh, That sounds good. Except now I've got my hook going toward your face. So you have to fight me again.
Well, what does he say too? Like Peter tries to just leave with the kids, but Hook threatens to just keep coming after him. Like, you'll never be safe. I'll always come after your kids and their kids and stuff.
Yeah. The generational aspect of it there, it was actually pretty amazing, right? That he's like, basically, I will haunt your family to all of their graves. Like the idea of a familial enemy where it's like not just his enemy, but the enemy of all of his family going forward for infinite generations is really powerful, man. Like, I understand why he came back into the fight, but then again, like he tries to show him mercy after that, and it never happens because Hook wants to die. Captain Hook wants to die.
He's a suicidal Hook. Like we talked about. What does he say at one point where he says, death is the only great adventure, which is, in complete contrast to
Jordan,
Peter's point of view.
Are you ready? Are you ready for this monologue?
Is this the nihilism from Neverland?
It's time. So Hook gets his wish. The crocodile that bit off his arm so long ago falls down on top of him and comes back to life for a split second to gobble him up and eat him, and he's dead. And that's it. He's gone. And now that he's gone, Jordan, I have so many questions, and I have some philosophical thoughts.
Can I jump in real quick and just mention one line before Hook goes, before the gator gets him?
It might set me up, so go for it.
During the fight, Peter says, I remember you being a lot bigger. And Hook says, to a 10-year-old, I'm huge. Which, I didn't notice this as a kid, but Dustin Hoffman is not a man of great stature. He is a short man, and watching this, there's some wide shots where you really get to see how short he is compared to other actors. And I just thought that was a fun dig, maybe at his height, but to a 10-year-old, he's still huge. He's still Captain Hook, but he's a very short Captain Hook.
Jordan, on a metaphorical level, right? He is a very small man.
Yes, he is.
As a person. All right, here we go. We're diving in, Jordan. Get ready.
Diving in.
Okay, so the actual world we're in here in Hook, we've got the Lost Boys, who we find out are made up of kids rescued from Earth by Tinkerbell. It's like orphans or kids who were abandoned or ran off. Tinkerbell rescues them, and she brings them to live in Neverland. And in Neverland, they will never, ever grow up. And they get to experience perpetual childhood, right? But there are also adults on the island, Jordan, the pirates. Where did they come from? Did they come from Earth as well? Or were they Lost Boys a long, long time ago and you just age very, very slowly in Neverland?
Captain Hook was once a Lost Boy.
Was he? Is that true?
I don't know, but that's an interesting, rabbit hole to go down.
Yeah, that's what I wonder, right? So, also, do Hook and Smee, if the pirates weren't once Lost Boys, if they are from Earth, do Hook and Smee periodically visit Earth to take street-brawling drunkards back to Neverland, where they become street-brawling drunken pirates?
That's where all those adults came from, maybe. They weren't lost boys. They were just abducted from Earth.
Well, that's what I wonder, right? Because we see Shmi on Earth later. Like, we know that he's been going there regularly.
Was he sweeping up at the end somewhere, like by the fountain?
And I think he was washing a window earlier, and we don't see him. We just hear he was there. Jordan, what do these pirates do on the ship with Hook? It looks like most of the time they just lie around the dock drunk while periodically visiting prostitutes, because there are prostitutes on this ship. We see the winches with lots and lots of cleavage. They're there. And I guess they're taken from Earth too. Like, Hook and Shmi went around looking for prostitutes up and down the streets of London and then brought them back to Neverland. Man, and you already mentioned
like
it,
some
but how
Jack the Ripper style stuff going on.
Yeah, for real. Like, oh, this girl went missing, but really she's just turning tricks in Neverland with pirates.
Turning tricks in Neverland with the nihilistic pirates.
And how did Hook get there? Like we were just saying, has he always been there?
Right. Is it like Tinkerbell versus Hook, and she's bringing the kids in and he's bringing in the drunken adults?
Well, yeah, that's what I'm thinking, right? Because if he was a lost boy once, then that means Tinkerbell originally brought him there. But if not, and we just said, like, were the lost boys, were the pirates all lost boys at one point and then aged over a great time? And maybe Hook was the first lost boy, right?
We're getting into some mythology here, some lore of this world. I think we need to sit down and write some books, man.
I think so too. But if not, if all these pirates were brought here by Hook, then is like this whole thing Tinkerbell's fault? Like, she keeps bringing children.
Damn that Julia Roberts.
Yes, she's creating an endless war between men and children, all because some obnoxious fairy was lonely. Like, what is Spielberg saying here? Because, okay, the war is between men and children. Like, the continuous war in Neverland is men and children killing each other, right? What is this statement Spielberg is trying to make? Because there's definitely a basic, let's let kids be kids and grown-ups act like grown-ups, but not forget what it feels like to be a kid, and maybe also sometimes act like a kid when you're with a kid. But then you have all this stuff about Hook and the clocks where he can't even bear to see time passing, because I think there's a statement made that it's not even because of the crocodile that he smashes clocks. It's because to him, the concept of time passing, he can't bear it. So he has to smash all the clocks. So the pirates, they're trapped in this sort of perpetual immature adulthood. A bunch of man-children, like in the worst sense, right? Because they've traded pretending games for booze and prostitutes and killing children. And they're all pumped up for war, fighting prepubescents who eat pretend food. And then when they fight each other, like we said, they're using swords, and the kids, some are using swords, but other ones are like shooting paint at the pirates and throwing marbles at them. And the pirates just can't beat these marbles, right? It's like high-powered marbles that they can't not slip on. You know what I think this all boils down to, Jordan? Can you take a guess?
Gators?
Jordan, this movie is all about nihilism.
I knew it. We're going back to it. Nihilism in Neverland.
Yes, there is. Because you got the extra oomph, and including the line from the original book, to live would be an awfully great adventure. That's what Peter says when he leaves the Lost Boys behind.
That's his final moment. Yeah, that's his final statement.
And another amazingly moving scene where he puts Thudbutt in charge, and he says, I'm going to pick who's going to be in charge, and he moves the sword around and then ends up on Thudbutt. And I cried. It's moving. John Williams has the choir singing. Beautiful lighting. A sun rising. Gorgeous. But he says to live would be an awfully great adventure whenever he leaves. And it's a complete rejection of Hook's romanticism of death as the greatest adventure. Because that's what Hook says.
Exactly.
Yes. Hook is suicidal throughout the whole film, right? He just wants to fight Peter Pan so that he can die. Can we argue with that? That's all he wants.
That's all he wants. Because, he knows he's not going to win, right? Like, he can't fly. He doesn't have an army of lost boys who are apparently invincible, other than Rufio. But
yeah, he won't let Peter leave him in peace. He wants Peter to kill him. He has no personal purpose except to die.
Right. They're not out looting and pirating. Like you said, they're just chilling on the ship and getting drunk, like totally useless. So yeah, he's just, he's aware that he's a useless and purposeless person. And yeah, nihilism is his motto. It's where he's coming from, because death is what he desires, and that's what he lives for. It's the great adventure. He's given up on everything else. So
Jordan, you know who that reminds me of? You know who Captain Hook reminds me of? Well, I'll tell you. The philosophy professor, Claudia Crawford, said Nietzsche wrote often of suicide as the moral act of nihilism. When one sees that one is no longer at the height of life and is declining, Nietzsche suggested it would be one's duty to accept voluntary death, or as he himself said, "My death, I praise to you, the free death which comes to me because I want it. And when shall I want it? He who has a goal and an heir will want death at the right time for his goal and heir, and from reverence for his goal and heir he will hang no more dry wreaths in the sanctuary of life. One must cease letting oneself be eaten when one tastes best. That is known to those who want to be loved long." Dude, what a colossal asshole. But anyway,
was that a speech from Captain Hook, or was that Nietzsche? Was that a Nietzsche voice, or was that a Captain Hook voice?
It was a Captain Hook voice, because he's definitely a nihilist, dude. You can't even tell the difference when you read
I'm pretty
this.
sure that's how Nietzsche sounded too.
Yes, exactly. So that's it, man. I think that this movie is condemning Captain Hook's nihilism for more of a positive outlook, right? To live would be the greatest adventure. It's a rejection of death as the great adventure, of suicide being the moral act of nihilism. No. Wrong.
Yeah.
Wrong, says Hook, directed by Steven Spielberg in 1991.
Yeah, it's nihilism versus optimism, right? And we can talk about the nihilistic aspect of, the materialistic adult world that Peter represents in the beginning of the movie.
Preach it.
Yeah, so he's just living for temporary success, the material success, having money and the great job and everything in the beginning. And we come to see him be a changed man. He's embracing the childlike spirit. He throws his phone out the window at the end. He rejects the nihilism of materialism. He rejects death being the great adventure by saying, we're going to live, and that's, my highest pursuit. And Captain Hook gets eaten by the croc. And
that's right.
It's peachy and, good times and good feels, like you said. It's a great moving ending. I definitely did not remember the unrequited love and sexual burning of Tinkerbell and Grandma Wendy. But, her at the end saying that, Tinkerbell saying, she meets him at the fountain when he wakes up and says, "It's like that place between dreaming and waking, and I'll be waiting." That her line, "I'll be waiting," just heartbroken, man, just carrying so much pathos, just so much emotion there.
How beautifully written was that line? You know who wrote that line? It was Carrie Fisher, came in to do some ghostwriting on the script at the end, and she wrote that. It's brilliant. It's so beautiful, and it feels so true. She's in this movie too. She and George Lucas have a cameo in the scene where Peter gets taken by Tinkerbell to Neverland, and fairy dust is flying around everywhere.
They're the two kissing?
Yes, they're the couple who are kissing, and they get lifted in the air by the Tinkerbell dust, and it's just really, really beautiful.
Well, we didn't talk about the Glenn Close cameo. As Gutless. So she plays she's in drag. She's a male pirate on Captain Hook's ship, and so she gets pointed out as a traitor amongst the rank. We think he's going to point out Peter, who's dressed up like a pirate, but no, it's Glenn Close, and she gets put in the boo box, which is basically looks like a large treasure chest that they then throw scorpions inside of. So,
yes, and one of the pirates there is Tony Burden from the Rocky movies, which I love him so much in those movies, and he's fun here just for the moment that he's in it. But Jordan, we're at the end of Hook. You get that just beautiful John Williams music where he introduces a new theme that promises hope for tomorrow, and he's so good. I mean, the score for this movie, for Hook, a kid's movie that's considered a throwaway Spielberg movie, the score in this movie by John Williams is probably the best score from that year, which is insane. That guy,
that is insane.
It's so far ahead of anyone else who's composed music for movies, it isn't even funny. But beautiful ending. What about the shot where Peter wakes up in the snow by the fountain with the music in the background? How beautiful is that?
Oh, it's gorgeous, man. That's when he meets Tinkerbell and has that whole moving moment. And yeah, it's so tragic. Her just saying, "I'll be there. I'll be waiting." This is some grown up stuff. Like this is some deep, heavy themes mixed into all this, fancy and feast. But man, her saying, "I'll be waiting," like she knows he's married. She knows he's got to move on with his family, but yeah, she's still pining for him, man. She's still out there in the world between dreams and reality. It's just
that's where he's not married,
That's where he's not married. Yeah, I'm just seeing him like sneaking off, in the future, just kind of double dipping. Dude, Peter Pan, you rascal.
Well, Jordan, that's it for Hook. What did you think overall? What's your final score for this?
Man, was definitely better than I thought it would be, or that I even remembered. I mean, it's uneven for sure. It's filled with some wacky stuff, plenty of off-the-wall Freudian themes, but it had me hooked, like I said, after a while. And, I never felt like it really was a slog, maybe the very beginning, like I mentioned. But once I was in it, I was there. I was entertained. 1 minute's off-the-wall stuff, like, what the hell am I watching? And then the next, I'm totally like a little kid again. It's just movie magic, bringing these characters to life, making me feel all this stuff, making me question my relationship with my kids, wanting to be a better dad, all that. Hoffman is gorgeously, terribly, awesome, distractingly weird, but he's just like utterly committed throughout this movie, and he never lets up. And Robin Williams, like I said, I think he's perfect in this role. He plays both sides very convincingly. For the most part, all the kid actors, like I said, do a great job. They're not terrible. They're not great. But yeah, man, this movie, it's better than I remembered or even imagined. I gave it a 3.5 out of 5.
Well, I watched this, and the logical inconsistencies of me thinking too hard about like why kids and grown-ups are in an eternal battle and how did anybody get here, and overthinking stuff like that. I was thinking like, I'm going to give this movie a 6, and that's only out of nostalgia. But honestly, talking to you about this and just finding that we're emotionally connecting to scenes over and over again throughout the movie, just consistently, I can't do that. I've got to agree with your score, and I've got to say this is a 7 out of 10 for me. For sure, it's heavily flawed, but
for sure.
And I think there's kind of two crowds, and it's often viewed as the crowd that has nostalgia for this and just likes it because of that, and then the crowd that correctly recognizes that this is just a stupid idiot movie no one should ever watch. And I think that that's wrong. I think you can be in the middle and say this movie has so many wonderful things about it, so many great moments, so many beautiful shots, so many moments that just hit, that from script to page, which we didn't even mention, the original story for this movie before it went into script form was co-written by Nicholas Castle, who played Michael Myers in the first Halloween movie and directed Major Payne and had a really eclectic career. But
that blows my mind, man.
It's insane.
Like, what? The Shape was the director of Major Payne and the writer of Hook. Like, no wonder this movie is so messed up, man. Michael Myers, freaking that freaky Freddy Krueger moment explains everything, dude.
Oh, you're right. You definitely wrote that. Yeah, man. So 7 out of 10 for me. Thank you, patrons, for voting for this. I don't know if it was the one that either of us wanted to win, but I'm very glad that it won. And I didn't own the score for Hook, and I collect all the scores for the movies that we cover. It didn't take much to click buy on that. It still goes for like, I don't know, $6 or $7 used on eBay, and that was a really easy purchase. And it's in the shoebox with all the other Filmshake soundtracks. I digitized it and clouded it, put it in the cloud, and I've been listening to it nonstop this past week. So thanks, John Williams, for being the greatest of all time.
He's great, man. I gotta go and listen to that score on its own. Good stuff. All right, well, I did Movie Connection last time. I'm hoping you have something for us here. We're going to try and connect Hook to True Romance. So, do you have anything?
Hook to True Romance. Now, you would think this would be really difficult, right? And we're moving chronologically backwards here. because, well, I say chronologically, I mean when they were released, it's chronologically backwards. And backwards is a direction. In True Romance, our characters go from east to west. They start off in Detroit and they move to Los Angeles. In Hook, there's a giant compass built into the sea, which always really blew my mind, thinking like there's a landform here that's a perfect compass. And are there other places in Neverland? We know that there are Indians on the other side of the little island there, but what's across the seas in Neverland? Is this a fully formed planet with other continents where other people live? I want to know. There's just a world here that hasn't been explored enough in modern times, and I would really like to see that happen. And that's it. Movie connection. Boom.
Maybe those questions are answered in another adaptation of Peter Pan that involves Christopher Walken, which I wish I would have known about this before I punished you with 1941. But you sent me some GIFs in a text of like these dancing pirates, and I'm just like, what the hell is this? Stop sending this to me. This is freaking me out. But apparently it's from Peter Pan, like a musical that was on ABC or something, and it has Christopher Walken as Hook. And even though that's not the movie we reviewed, that's still a Peter Pan connection, and Christopher Walken was in True Romance, so there you go. Have you seen that special? That is it like a TV special or something?
I think it was like a live NBC thing when they were kind of doing a bunch of live musicals, and I think Allison Williams played Peter Pan. But no, I did not watch it. I
just want to watch it for Walken. That's got to be so. I mean, because he's a great dancer. So
yeah, man, he's killing it in those GIFs.
Yeah, he's killing it. I didn't even recognize that was Walken until you sent me the poster. All right, well, there's your movie connection. Time to get into our trivia battle.
Hold it! Pop quiz, hotshot.
Yes, I'm excited because this trivia battle is going to really help lead into our next episode. And I wrote real questions for you this time, Jordan. I know last time I probably put more work into the questions than usual, but it was impossible for you to miss them. You could actually miss some of these.
It was more work to make sure that I didn't miss those questions.
Yes. I focus grouped it with kindergartners before we recorded the episode, and they got every question right, so I felt pretty good.
Well, as of late, continuing my tradition, I didn't write my own questions, and I know how much you love the Fred Willard book, so I'm bringing it back, the magnificent movie trivia book, and this time he's got a section on swashbucklers, so get ready.
Let's do this. I'll go first. I'll ask you the first question.
Okay.
All right. My questions are all Spielberg related.
All right.
Question 1, and this is, to me, is the easiest one. Out of these 4 films that Spielberg directed, which stars his current wife? Is it A, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, B, AI, Artificial Intelligence, C, E.T., the Extraterrestrial, or D, Amistad?
Is it Temple of Doom?
That is correct. Kate Capshaw played Willie in the Temple of Doom. Spielberg was going through a dark time then, right? He had just gotten divorced. He and Lucas both, their relationships dissolved, and they were angry, and they just wanted to rip some hearts out. But look, he met his still wife to this day now on that movie. So, yeah, easy question.
Did some heart ripping in that movie, too.
Yeah. Literally. That was my son's favorite scene. He loved that part. He did watch all of Temple of Doom. Yeah, so good job, Jordan. You got my easiest question correct. I'm very proud of you.
All right. I was about to say, if I miss the easiest question, then, it doesn't look good for me.
I think these are all really easy. I mean, I love Spielberg's movies, so I know the answer to these, but I feel like you'll know these.
All right. Well, first question for me of the swashbucklers. In which swashbuckler film do Basil Rathbone and Errol Flynn cross swords? Was it A, Captain Blood, B, The Corsican Brothers, C, Beau Guest, or D, The Prince and the Pauper?
Is it Captain Blood?
You got it.
Yay!
That was probably the easiest one. So starting off on the same page.
All right. Next question. Which of these actors do not make an appearance in Saving Private Ryan? Is it A, Vin Diesel, B, Ryan Hurst, C, Ted Danson, D, John Hamm?
Yeah, I feel like there's so many people in that movie. Shoot. I'm just going to guess Vin Diesel. Was he in it?
Oh, Vin Diesel was in the movie. He did make an appearance. He was actually, of all these people, probably the most major character. He was part of the party that goes out looking for Private Ryan, led by Tom Hanks. But he is the first to die. He has a pretty memorable death scene in the rain where he passes on a letter to someone.
Everybody is covered in, battle gear and dirt so much in that movie, and I don't know who anybody is other than Tom Hanks, Tom Sizemore, and Matt Damon. So.
Well, Ryan Hurst, who's an actor from mostly television, he's just really recognizable because he's a really big guy, and he's in it. And then Ted Danson, when he pops up in Private Ryan, I love Ted Danson. I think he's a brilliant actor, but it's really when he pops up, you're like, oh, what's Ted Danson doing here? This is weird. Mm-hmm. But John Hamm from Mad Men, he is not in Saving Private Ryan, so the answer was John Hamm.
All right, next question. What character has been played by Gene Kelly, Don Amici, and Michael York? Is it A, the Scarlet Pimpernel, B, the Count of Monte Cristo, C, D'Artagnan, or D, Zorro?
Was it the Count of Monte Cristo?
Nope, it was C, D'Artagnan.
Ah, there you go. Well, Jordan, obviously, I got to ask you a film score question whenever we're doing a movie that John Williams scored, when this is our first John Williams scored movie for Film Shake.
Oh, all right.
So which one of these Steven Spielberg movies did John Williams score? So he only scored one of these. Was it A, Ready Player One, B, The Color Purple, C, Empire of the Sun, or D, Bridge of Spies?
Was it Color Purple?
No, he actually did not score that. It was Empire of the Sun.
Yeah, it was between those two in my mind.
It's a really striking film, Empire of the Sun. There's some imagery. I watched that one when I was a kid, and there's some imagery in there that messed me up, especially some imagery involving an orange, if I remember correctly.
I have not seen that one. Isn't, what's his face in that one? Is that his first movie?
Christian Bale, yeah.
Christian Bale, yeah.
And he's really good. You can see why he is still an actor now. And I think you guessed The Color Purple. That Quincy Jones did the score for that.
Okay.
Haven't seen that one in a long time.
All right. So next question for me. What son of a swashbuckler starred in 1964's The Son of Captain Blood? Was it A, Douglas Fairbanks Jr., B, Sean Flynn, C, Cornell Wilde Jr., or D, William Lancaster?
That's hard. I want to say Sean Flynn, but for some reason I'm going to guess William Lancaster.
It was Sean Flynn.
Oh, I should have said Sean Flynn.
Should have, man.
I thought that was too easy. I thought you were tricking me, but you weren't. I thought Willard was tricking me.
He did trick you, but in a different way.
Yeah, he did. All right, I'm just going to hit you with my next question. Who narrates 2011's War Horse? Is it A, Michael Caine, B, Benedict Cumberbatch, C, Mel Gibson, or D, Richard Attenborough?
For some reason, I want to say it's Benedict Cumberbatch. Am I right?
Wrong. It was Michael Caine. I haven't seen that one. That's why I said once you get to the 2010s, I dropped off. I haven't seen all his movies.
I've seen that one in theater, but I don't remember much about it. I don't remember being in love with it or hating it. It was just kind of middle of the road. But I believe Benedict Cumberbatch is in the movie as a character, so maybe that's why I'm thinking
he is in the movie, but he's not the narrator.
Not the
Michael
narrator.
Caine.
Should have known good old Michael Caine and his English accent. Would have been the narrator. All right, hopefully last question for me. Who portrays an aging Diego de la Vega in The Mask of Zorro from 1998? Was it A, Anthony Hopkins, B, Sean Connery, C, George Hamilton, or D, Frank Langella?
I can't remember if Frank Langella is in that. It's been so long since I watched it. But I know Anthony Hopkins was, so I'm going to guess Anthony Hopkins.
You son of a bitch. You got it right. In this inventive spin on the Zorro legend, Hopkins portrays the original Zorro, whose real name is Diego de la Vega.
I almost second-guessed myself there, though, because of the presence of our friend Frank Langella.
Cutthroat Island, yeah. Throwing you off there, maybe.
Our next episode is a request from one of our patrons, Chaz. I'm really, and I hope you are also pumped about this, Jordan. We're going to cover The 13th Warrior from 1999, directed by John McTiernan and based on Eaters of the Dead by Michael Crichton, which I'm going to read the book for the episode. I'm pumped about that. It's one of the few Crichton books that I've never read. And I remember like really, really wanting to like this film, and I can't even remember how I really felt about it. It's been so long since I've seen it. So I'm really pumped to revisit it. And the Punishment movie, which was also suggested by Chaz, is going to be an adaptation of one of Crichton's books that was adapted not in the 90s. So it's perfect. We weren't going to cover this for a main episode. And that movie is Timeline, based on the 1999 book Timeline. But Jordan, you know what? I'm going to do that thing where I watch the Punishment movie with you too, because I feel like I've watched every Crichton adaptation except Timeline. Why not watch Timeline too? Paul Walker's in it. I like Paul Walker. I'll watch it with you.
What month will this episode come out?
Hook should be coming out possibly on August 31st. You might be listening to this on August 31st.
So 13th Warrior, probably September. I was just going to try and work in the tagline for Timeline, which is, "This November, your history."
Jordan, dream on. We're not even close to November. You can't weasel out of watching that movie until then.
Well, this September, I'm history, because I have to watch this freaking movie that has 5 out of 10 on IMDb. A group of archaeologists become trapped in the past when they go there to retrieve a friend. The group must survive in 14th century France before they can escape back to the 21st century. Directed by Richard Donner.
Here's the thing, though. This is what I don't get.
At least it's Donner.
Yes, exactly. This movie has a horrible reputation, but Richard Donner, I mean, the original Superman movie, the Lethal Weapon movies, the Goonies.
Right. Lady Hawk.
But I don't get how this movie can be so bad. Maybe it really is. I don't know. I'm kind of hoping it's a little better than its reputation, because the book is a lot of fun. It's the last book Crichton wrote in the 90s, one of the last books he wrote that was published in his lifetime. So,
you know why it's probably so bad? I'm going to take a wild guess here. Because the top cast includes Paul Walker and Gerard Butler, two people that I utterly hate.
Rest in peace, Paul Walker and Gerard Butler. I've already talked about him in a bonus episode. He's a lot to take sometimes, but I don't know. We'll see what Gerard Butler we get in this movie, because there's a certain version of him that I like.
Maybe David Thewlis will redeem it in some way, because I really like him. He's always kind of schwarmy and sleazy, and I enjoy his presence.
He's a lot of fun. But again, so 13th Warrior will be the main body of that episode, which again, that was a patron request. We had 8 spots for the $5 a month patrons where they could request movies, and Chaz has requested this movie. We're super excited. We still have a Patreon if you want to support us. We have some different tiers now. You can't request a movie anymore just because there's not enough time in a year for more than 8 people to make requests for us to cover, but we do have some other tiers there. And also, I want to celebrate one of our $5 patrons, because not only do you get to make requests, we name a sandwich after you, make up that sandwich and what it's going to be, and then I prepare it and I eat it. And this week, or I say this week all the time, but we're not a weekly podcast. We're every 3 to 4 weeks. So this every 3 to 4 weeks. The patron we're highlighting is Anthony Alisi.
He's I think, brother-in-law of our guest, Doug. That's how he found out about the show.
Oh, rad.
He loved the 80s show, and then he asked Doug, do you know any shows that cover 90s? And I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Anthony. But yeah, Doug pointed him to our show, and he became our patron, and thank you so much. Yeah, been a cool guy to talk to.
All right, so I've been buying most of these ingredients for these sandwiches from the excellent Canatella Grocery on Government Street here in Baton Rouge. But somehow there's an equally awesome Italian deli grocery just a few miles down on the same street, on Government Street, and that deli is called Anthony's. So how awesome is that? And with that said, I present to you the awesome Anthony. I am going to take Anthony's signature spaghetti and meatballs. I'm going to place a link of Anthony's famous Italian sausage on top of those spaghetti and meatballs. I'm going to cover that in provolone, mortadella, and Parmesan cheese, and I'm going to shove all of that between a loaf of Italian-style po' boy bread and twice bake it in the oven to create a delicious monstrosity that will have an even greater chance of killing me than all our previous sandwiches combined. It's going to be the awesome Anthony.
Gary Busey would be proud.
Yes, for sure.
Give me two. Give me two.
That's right. If Busey could eat two, what am I saying? Of course Busey could eat two of these. I think right now he could still eat two of them.
I'm pretty sure that is the sandwich that Keanu Reeves got from the meatball sandwich stand before they went into the bank in Point Break.
Kinky stuff, Pappas.
All right, well, good stuff. Yes, thank you, Anthony, for your support. Everybody else, if you haven't already, you can sign up to be a patron. You can go to patreon.com/filmshake. We have a $3 tier where you get our bonus episodes every month and lots of other extra goodies, behind the scenes stuff on Patreon. Thank you guys for listening. Tune in next time for more Film Shake.
Take it easy. This works out because I've been buying most of the ingredients from these sandwiches from the excellent Canatella Grocery, which is on Government Boulevard here in Baton Rouge. But somehow...
Government Boulevard?
Yeah, Government, man.
Government Street?
Is it a street?
It's a street! Yeah. For all you locals. Get it right.
Wait, is it not Boulevard? Is it really
Boulevard.
street? It is
Government Street.
Is there not a Government Boulevard here in Baton Rouge? We're doing like a deep...
smoking?
We're doing like a deep geography cut of Baton Rouge.
No, there's all this out.
No, there's only a Government Boulevard in damn Alabama. No. Okay, let's start that over. I will. I'm not even gonna leave this in. I really am gonna cut it out.
All right. Yeah. Nobody wants to hear us fight over the geography of Baton Rouge.